Today I'm gonna tell you about myself because I realized that I hardly talk about myself. I find it very difficult to talk about myself, and therefore I will, to live unbound. And I actually started with my friend recently. He said, "Oh, I've seen some of your videos. I watched your video on anger twice. It was pretty good. You look like you got your shit together. You probably grew up in a really good family and you had a good life and you learned a lot and you studied." And I'm like, well, actually, it's the opposite. So I don't know what you think about me, but probably something. And I want to tell you the truth. I want to tell you who I am and how I got to be here. So I grew up in Czechoslovakia, which is the Czech Republic right now. I grew up with my brother and my mom, and I had extremely distressing childhood. I remember just crying all the time. I felt always alone. I was that child that my mom was always shouting at me. I was always shouted at, so I completely withdrew from any kind of interactions and engagements. And I felt really embarrassed. I had a lot of shame around that because all my friends knew that when I was on the street, when I was outside, my mom would just open the window and she would shout at me. And so I was the bad kid, and I grew up with that label. I was the one who their parents said, don't talk to them, like, don't be friends with them. I just felt like it's cool. I was bored. I always had some more ideas than other kids, creative ideas. But back then it was just misbehaving. And so I was suffering a lot and I was looking for something. And then at the same time, I developed a lot of introspection, a lot of self-awareness. I started reading different books in very young age. I started to studying psychology and just different ways I could navigate in that life, because I was like, what am I doing in here? I found there was nobody else ever to talk to. I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I was always by myself. That was my story. Didn't belong, didn't fit anywhere, and felt completely invisible. I felt so invisible that in class, like, I would never raise my hand. And if I had to talk in a group, I was always hiding and pretending, because I couldn't bear saying the truth of what I really thought, because that would be so, to be seen like that, it would be really extremely hard for me. So I was pretending and I was just saying what I thought people wanted to hear, and I never really connected with anyone. So I felt again really lonely, alone, go through my life. And obviously there were some great parts, some great friends, but mostly I just remember having a lot of suffering and a lot of drama. I was that kind of person who I just didn't know how to connect with people. Basically, that's how I would summarize it. So my journey started there, and I went to high school, studied some sort of, what was it, like economy, accounting, even like things like that, which is completely irrelevant. But there was some psychology. And then I moved to England when I was 19. It was the first time when I left the country. I really wanted to learn English from scratch. So I was learning there. And I started discovering different books and reading about empowerment and self-development, and I was so interested. I was like, wow, oh my gosh, so this is not just me, there's more people out there, and I can figure this out, I can like improve myself. And so my search was ongoing for so long. Then I went to study psychology when I was in England. In the meantime, I also traveled to the States and came back. That's when my dad died when I was 21. So I was dealing with that. It wasn't even so much grieving, because I didn't grieve until much later. It was more about, what am I doing with my life and with the things that he wanted me to be. Like, he was building a house for me and I saw it because I felt like I didn't deserve it. And then I had some money and I didn't know what to spend it for. I felt like it was totally, I didn't deserve any of that. So I spent it for education, and I started studying psychology. That was in England. And then I did masters in transpersonal psychology. That's when I started really being interested in something was going on in there for me. because psychology never really did it for me. It was a lot of theories and a lot of essays and just a lot of theories, like very academic, very masculine, very logical, and which was great. I was doing good with those essays. Also, I want to tell you one more story which happened when I was growing up, and that was I was carrying a lot of shame for actually being good at something. And that's because when I was growing up at school, maybe when I was 10 or under, it was with my friends, it was unacceptable to be good at something, because because people were looking at me as a nerd, as someone like, oh, you're the nerdy one, or my mom would call me a smart ass. So I was feeling a lot of shame around that. And once in the class, we had these tests. They were like international tests, and they were from physics and maths, but they didn't really test the curriculum. They tested more like IQ and like some other things like out of the box thinking and stuff like that. So we were doing these tests, and even though I didn't have very great grades, like I enjoyed these tests, and I submitted them. And then our teacher put us in line at school, like who was who was the who had the best score and to the worst score. And in both cases, I was the first one. And I can't tell you how ashamed I was for that. And people were looking at me. Maybe someone was jealous, or someone just didn't know how to deal with. Imagine like how ashamed had to feel the person who was the least. I thought that was like the worst thing ever, to put kids in the line, like, oh, who did the best? But anyway, so I was carrying so much shame, and it was hard for me to shine my light. And however, I kept working on myself, kept reading. I did all different kinds of workshops. I traveled the world. I studied. I had some of the best coaches ever in the world. I've done some of the best retreats and workshops. Spent so much money for my own self-development to actually be the person who I am today, I was looking for that truth, and I was never really satisfied. Like sometimes, you do like, I did like Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within, and it was big and great, but then you go home and after a few weeks, a few months, you just feel like, oh, it didn't really do anything for me. Or, read the book, or just have some really amazing coaching with someone. And then again, I was coming back to myself. And I also finished my mindfulness and relaxation meditation teacher's training. So I was doing some workshops. That was still in London. I was also teaching lucid dreaming, and I really enjoyed that. And I felt like there was always something missing in there. Like, all these theories, all these people talk about things, and I just didn't know what is really the truth. I didn't know like what is really going on. Where am I coming from? And I studied different religions, from Buddhism. I'm obviously in transpersonal psychology. There was a lot of different, the West and then East, a lot of studies around different traditions. And so I was kind of trying to put it all together. And, sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it didn't make sense. And then I started travel. And a few times in my life, I've been part of some medicinal ceremonies. That's my puppy, she's trying to come here. Medicinal ceremonies, and they started really opening my mind to new possibilities. I started to see new possibilities and completely different ways of thinking. Because before, I never really taken any drugs in my life. So I was like, drugs are so bad. But these psychedelic medicines are completely different than you probably know. They are held in a ceremonial settings, and you do it usually with a shaman. And even though now I feel like there's just too much of it, and it just became such a big business, but there is one that was like a big, huge breakthrough in my life, because I've had all these little experiences, and they were like, wow, they're great, wow. I found myself, I had all these mystical experiences, I know who I am. And then I came back into this and like, wow, actually, I don't feel that good, or I have anxiety and I don't know what to do with my life. like, why am I here? Like, what is really happening? Like, why am I thinking about past? Why am I thinking distressed when I know I shouldn't be feeling, when I have all the tools that I had from psychology and from all, coaching and empowerment people, and still I wasn't feeling happy. And so this breakthrough happened with a ceremony that I had that was an African root that I ate. It was a small ceremony, only women, it was 4 women, a woman shaman and her helper. And I had one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. And it's hard to put into words, but it was so clear to me with this particular medicine plant. There's really clear visions. So I was seeing visions, but at the same time, I was having direct communication with my soul or with my higher self. And it was just any questions I had were just like answered like straight away. And so this plant, which is my greatest teacher, showed me basically how creation is being created and that we all are creators. And it showed me everything in a way that I could completely understand. Because before I knew, okay, there is no past, there is no future, as a Power of the Now book was saying, there's only the mind being the present moment. The present moment is all that matters. I understood that intellectually. But here, when I was with this plant, it showed me like in a graphic representation, like for me, so I understand it, that really all there was just this present moment, like this moment, and the past, future, there was just nothing, void, literally void, and everything else is made up. It's completely made up and it's complete bullshit. Everything what I know, everything what I'm thinking about the future, about the past, even my memories, they are not real, they're illusions. And it's everything is an illusion, so I can believe that this is real, so I can have this human experience. And it's changed so many things for me. It's changed everything, the way I see things and the way I see people. Now, whenever I look at someone, this is the first time I'm talking to them. And yeah, everything else, a lot of wisdom came through speech, the way I speak, because I know that I create my world with my word and with my senses. So it showed me how I'm creating everything with my senses by looking at it, by touching it, by smelling it. So it's not there and that I'm experiencing, it's experiencing it by creating it. And I know it might sound a little bit crazy. You might be reading something about quantum physics and all of that, and it kind of makes sense. And I read all of that holographic universe, and I used to be so much into that. But this really was wisdom that was coming to me straight, and I completely understood it in a way I never thought possible. And yeah, here I am. I feel like since then I've been extremely connected to my intuition, to my higher self, or to my soul, whatever you want to call it. Like, I have no questions. If I have any questions, they are being answered very quickly. And also important part is the creation. We are all creators. You are a creator. That means that you can create. And the way we create, this is one of the questions I was asking, like, but how can we create? Like, what is it coming from? Because I saw this creation, like everything was just coming from somewhere. And the answer for me was that it's being created from nothing, from void. It's like magic. Poof. It's magic. Life is magic. Everything what you see right now is magic. Everything what you see, you're creating. All your experience you have right now, you're creating. You're that powerful. And before I felt like, oh, I'm so small, and I felt so hopeless and helpless. And now I feel extremely empowered. I know that I'm responsible. I am creating all what's happening inside of me. And I'm creating all of these illusions of memories and worries and future and past. And what I really want to be focusing is on the present moment. And I want to be sharing all of this, what's been coming through me. And there is just so much more. There is so many ideas. There is so much that I just can't not to share it. Just coming up. And sometimes I still get very nervous about making my videos because my stories from the past come to me. When I say the past, is again the illusion that I've created so I can have this experience. But it doesn't matter because I am not invisible anymore. This is one of the reasons why I make these videos, because I know that story that I had in my mind was invisibility and not belonging. So I want to change that, and I'm creating this out of nothing. Just this is it, creating me, sharing with you, and I hope that it will resonate, at least some of it. And if something doesn't resonate and you think it's too crazy, then just forget about it. Maybe I will have something to share with you anyway. And I also wanted to say that I'm here not to teach you anything, because I don't want you to believe me anything what I'm saying anyway, because those are just my words and this is just my experience. But I hope that something will maybe resonate with you, all these ideas that I'm having and all of these intuition that's coming to me about what I am supposed to share in my life. So the resonance that you feel inside of you, I'm really hoping that it's your own connection to the higher self, your own connection to the soul that you have, that part of you that's there always, even though sometimes you don't feel it. So yeah, this is basically my story, or one of my stories that I wanted to share with you today. And feel free to ask me anything in the comments. I'm usually very responsive, especially about things like this. And if you need any clarification, I'm be super open to clarify anything. As I said, I am not gonna be hiding anymore. I am not gonna be pretending anymore. This is what I feel called to do. And thank you so much for being part of it. Thank you so much for doing this for you too, because I know you're searching for something, you're searching for some answers, and they're not gonna come from me. They're gonna come from you eventually. And I wanna be here as your consciousness enzyme, just help you to bring them out, because we are all on this journey together. So thank you so much for watching. And how far are you really willing to go to live unbound?